Disclaimer. This episode of the Crow's Nest podcast deals with various mental health topics. Neither Liv nor I are licensed doctors or therapists. All advice and diagnostic criteria come from our own experiences and should not be your only source of information on mental health. If you or a loved one are struggling, please contact your parent, guidance counselor, or doctor. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey St. Charles High, this is Dean Chapman
and Livy Lewis
here today in the Crow's Nest to talk about mental health. But first, how was your prom?
My prom was good. I went with my bubby.
Yeah.
He was my little date. I think we had fun. We just like hung out with friends and the food was okay. I didn't like the pasta, but everything else was okay. I didn't try the meat because I'm not a meat girl, but not a meat gal. But yeah, everything was good. How was yours?
Mine was good. I had a lot of struggles with my dress because it had like a deep V, and every time I sat down, it would kind of like fold over, and it was just like chest exposure, and the fashion tape wasn't working because it was so hot.
Yeah.
It's so windy. All of our pictures, I hope that they turn out good. But
I know, it was very windy. I was very stressed about that. I almost cried a couple times.
Oh, totally.
I actually did cry a couple times.
I mean, that's just the nature of prom.
I know, yeah.
But my friend gave me, it's like kind of like a big gold bracelet of like a flower. So she basically gave me a corsage, and she's like, I wanted to make sure that you had one that never died.
And you showed me it. It was so beautiful.
It was blue. It had all sorts of gems and like pearls. It was, I cried. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you looked like a king. You looked like a queen. You looked like a princess. You looked like just a slayer.
Yeah.
Like you were going to slay the dragon.
You looked amazing too. I love that color on you. That
Thank you.
Blushy pink.
Yeah.
Work.
I was scared I was too pale for it, but I think we pulled it off.
Oh,
I think we pulled it off.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, well, should we get started then?
Of course. Yeah. This episode is probably going to be, this is our second to last episode, which is so sad. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be one of the heavier ones, and probably something that we're going to have to film over like 1 or 2 class periods, because there's just, mental health is such a broad topic. I mean,
sure.
There's so many things that the brain can do wrong and what people can do wrong that makes your brain wrong,
I think one of the biggest reasons that it's important to me to talk about these things is because I think that mental illness a lot of times is seen as a negative thing, when in reality, I think that we're all just different human beings, and it's just different characteristics, different traits that make us who we are. Mm-hmm. And whether they be negative or positive, it's something that we have to deal with, and it's something we have to cope with, and knowing how to cope and be the best person possible is more important than hiding your vulnerability and hiding your true colors.
Yeah.
In a way of saying it, because it doesn't have to be who you are. Mm-hmm. These negative things don't have to be all that you are capable of having.
Yeah. And
that was one of the biggest things for me when I was struggling the most, is I felt like I was such a horrible person and I didn't deserve anything and yada, yada, yada. But it was because I didn't know how to come out of it and be like, I didn't do anything wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't deserve this. Nobody does. And I think that that's really where I want to hit on today, is just the difference between struggling and trying to get through it, and struggling and letting yourself drown.
Yeah. I think that a lot of these like disorders and anything that's basically not a neurotype, like something that you're not born with, people forget that outside sources are the reason for why a person might have it. Here an example is, so like autism is a neurotype. That is like how you're born, your brain is just wired differently. And I mean, people hear that all the time. However, if you go undiagnosed and you're in an abusive household, a lot of times what that can turn into is autism on top of borderline personality disorder.
Severe issues.
Yeah. So like, and that's not the person's fault. It's because they were with someone who was abusive, who did not get them the right treatment that they needed. So then they end up learning these coping mechanisms, and then their brain starts processing people's feelings and their own feelings differently. And then that ends up into a whole new like mental illness.
Yeah.
So like a lot of these times when it comes with depression and anxiety, outside of it being like a genetic inheritance, is that it's not all on you. Your environment and the people that you hang out with has so much to do with how you grow up and you process the world.
Yeah, it's definitely like that nature versus nurture. That's always been like a topic for psychologists or, you know, people in the medical field to look at. And it's definitely both that make you who you are. It's both that give you that personality type. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that nature versus nurture is so crucial. Especially, I really believe in the environment part. Like, I believe in both, but I think that the environment changes more, in my opinion. It depends on what you're looking at, but I think that it's the genetic part of it is set up, like it's something that you necessarily can't really change, but the environment part is definitely how you perceive things. It's how you react to things. It's how you learn to go throughout the world.
Yeah, it's like if you're building a house, a foundation is always going to be set a specific way. That would be your nature. But you could build it with bricks. You could build it with, you know, cement. You can build it with wood. You can build it with straw, build it with glass. You know, there's so many different ways that, you know, nurturing yourself and your environment can impact how you end up building your house or your body or your personality. I hate that argument because it goes back to the whole like black and white thinking and why like people are always one or the other when so many things are duality and gray and far more nuanced than just one or the other.
I agree, 100%. One thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is uncomfortability. Because you can find yourself uncomfortable in so many different situations, whether it be because of the type of person you are, whether it be because somebody is doing something to you or you just don't feel comfortable, maybe it's a new experience, anything. And so I feel like the most places where you find uncomfortability is with yourself, your environment, and relationships and friendships. So with yourself, it can be the type of person you're turning into. If you're making bad choices, you can be uncomfortable. If you're making good choices, but you're uncomfortable because everything's hard, you know? There's so many different ways of looking at it. But a good way to look at it is when you're uncomfortable, that is one of the best ways to grow as a person. When you're uncomfortable, you're experiencing new things. You are perceiving things differently. You are challenging yourself. And that's all that you can really ask for. One thing I used to always tell myself as an affirmation when I was struggling was, if you're giving like your all, that's all you can ask for. If you are just trying your best, then that is the most important thing. Because that's all I'm capable of doing. That's all I have control of. And I might not have always made the right decisions or asked the right questions or did the right thing, but I was trying my best. And so having that in the back of my head, I could have confidence with my choices. I could have confidence in what I was doing, or at least starting to get there. Does that make sense to you?
And like, and that way you have the ability to kind of forgive yourself, because then when quote, your best is not good enough for other people. You have the ability to say, well, I knew that I was trying my hardest at something. So, you know, that was just my best. And that is one of the things that my dad would always tell me, or whenever we talk about grades, he's like, well, did you try your hardest? And I say, yeah. And he's like, well, okay, it doesn't matter if you don't get an A+. Like, you know, you could scrap a C or something, but as long as you can say, I tried my hardest and I went out of my way to do my best. And if that wasn't up to the mark, then so be it. And, you know, that works so much more than just academically.
It's kind of like that black and white thing you were talking about. It's, you don't want to let yourself slack, but if you are not capable
if you're not in a place
doing
to
the
do
best,
it,
then you need to reach out and let someone know, because that's why I think people struggle with reaching out for help, is because they don't want to seem like they're slacking, or if it's not that big of a deal to them, then they are slacking, you know? So you definitely need to find that middle mark to go off of. But kind of like what you said with the grades, my mom said the same exact thing to me, which I understand, like, some people don't get that from their parents, which is kind of like our next topic. But my mom used to always say to me, I'm not asking for perfect grades. I'm asking for effort. I chose one word for this year, and it was effort, because that's so important to me. Just trying, just believing in yourself and giving effort to things that you want to do. It's the best way to make yourself successful, is wanting to do well. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if you don't want to do it, you're not going to. If you want to, you will. And so keeping that in the back of my head with effort is just like the most important thing for me right now.
Yeah. And that's really good to have that accountability with yourself. And I mean, that's self-reflection, being able to know where you are at and know what you're capable of, and kind of gauge everything you do kind of around that. That's a really important life skill, not only in high school, but also just in life in general. And so being able to tell yourself and know that I'm not in the best place right now, or this is not the best that I can give, or this is the best that I can give, that's something that is so crucial to just navigating the world, especially with society, especially in the US, is set up with, you know, you graduate, you go to college, you graduate, you work, you have kids, you retire, you die. You know, that
you die.
Yeah, like that projection of life is just, it's more nuanced than that. It's more complicated than that. Life is so much more than work, and life is so much more than, you know, being at your top condition. And I think companies and employers and jobs aren't understanding of that. Like, having a 40 to 60 hour work week should not be normalized. And if you have a job, or you're doing school and a job and trying to juggle that, and then if you see your mental health declining, don't put that on yourself, because your brain naturally doesn't function at that level. It shouldn't be normalized to do that to yourself.
I agree. That's definitely when you would need to take a step back and just be like, hey, I'm doing way too much. Like, we're human beings, you know, we're not robots. We can't work 60-hour weeks and be perfectly fine and feel no emotions. Like, we are creatures at the heart, and which is funny to think about, because when I think of creatures, I think of like my cat, my Biv, and he's like this little thing that like attacks my feet at night. But like, we really are like, we need that natural life still in our experiences.
Yeah.
You know, we aren't robots. We are human beings, and that's a really important thing to hold on to for happiness and success. You know, like success and money isn't everything. Sometimes just having a good friend is all that you really need, or having yourself.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on relationships and friendships last podcast, right?
Yeah.
But if I could give any like advice for when you're uncomfortable in situations, it would be, or like if you're having a confrontation, an argument, something like that, I think this goes for both sides, and it would be, don't listen to respond, listen to understand.
Yeah.
Because it's not always about you, you know?
Yeah.
I think that that's pretty self-explanatory. I just wanted to say that because I saw that on Instagram the other day, and I was like, that's some really good advice. I feel like that really just puts you in a place where it's not just you trying to defend yourself. It's you trying to understand that person and realize that they're coming to you for more than just to be mad at you. It's not because your anger is not because you just want to be hateful that day. Your anger is because you know that your inner child knows that you deserve better. And so if they feel that way, you need to acknowledge their feelings, you know? Or if you're upset, then you should expect to have your feelings acknowledged and seen as important and noticeable.
Things like that in emotions in general, especially when someone is upset with you or you're upset with someone, like when you're upset with someone, you know that it has depth. You know that there are multiple reasons why you're upset, whether it's about the situation itself or you had a cruddy day on top of it. I keep saying nuance, but it's true. Things are so multidimensional. But you need to expect and understand that same level of depth for everybody else. You know, as much as you want to take a confrontation as a personal attack, you really do have to take a step back and analyze your own actions, analyze why you did the way that you did things, and then their reaction. And then exactly what you said, you need to, you know, listen to understand, then to be understood. Mm-hmm. You remember those hardened 7 steps of proactive teens? I hated that garbage so much, yet that
somehow it comes
always,
in.
It comes back, and that might be, I think that's part of the issue, and some of the issues here at SCHS is that we were so ingrained to like learn this stuff that we have like gone and hated it, and then we didn't learn those lessons, and that has kind of reflected in our social relationships with our peers and our teachers.
I think that I took psychology, and so we learned about the prefrontal cortex and like your brain and
development.
Exactly. Yeah. The development of it. And one of the biggest things is impulsivity and choices, and anything that isn't a good idea, usually we are more drawn to.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is why, or one of the reasons why maturity is so hard for us to deal with. And that's why you'll hear a lot of times, like, if you grew up in a house where you weren't able to be like a kid, that's why your maturity is a lot higher, because you grew up faster.
Yeah.
And I think that I've always been a pretty mature person, I think, at least with an overall perspective.
Yeah.
But it definitely is hard, like, trying to get along with other people that aren't there. And it's nothing against them. I think we've kind of talked about this before, but it's just like the ignorance of it is so irrational, and not where I'm coming from at all.
The gap of understanding is like a big struggle, and it's not necessarily, it's not entirely a person's fault for not being there, you know?
Yeah.
Because when, like, especially when you go back to what you said about if you grew up in a abusive household or just a different household, a neglectful one, where you had to be an adult, you know, way earlier than you were supposed to, you'd
mature faster.
Yeah, well, it's not even about maturing faster, because cognitively you are still developing.
Yeah.
If anything, that maturity is just a trauma response in order to not get, not get into worse circumstances than you already are. You're trying to, like, negate all of that by trying to be as complacent and complicit in your situation as possible. That leads to a lot of burnout. And so we see there's like a bigger trend on TikTok and just a bigger trend in cultural consciousness of, like, you know, in your 20s, you're going to end up doing all the things that you wanted to do as a kid, and you buy Care Bear stuff, and you have a Squishmallow addiction and all this stuff because, you know, your circumstances didn't allow you to have those moments where you could just be
a kid.
Yeah, be a kid and just, you know, chill and not have as much responsibility as one does.
Yeah.
And it can totally, like, I mean, I just think about the gap. I've had a bunch of conversations at lunch recently about, I have a freshman who I took under my wing and stuff, and they were talking about in their honors English class how they had, like, a conversation just about, like, wealth and power and, you know, billionaires and stuff, and, you know, basically they were kind of tag teamed by the rest of the class to being like, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you know, they'll have classmates that will pull, like, I know one person who has a really, really good time at this corporate warehouse, so I think it's fine. It's like, you can't let one instance with your personal attachment and your personal bias be the way that you generalize a whole situation. And so they would come to me and be like, I'm really struggling in this class because it's like a genuine, I'm trying to have a critical thinking argument and facilitate a really intellectual argument, and despite being in an honors class, the kids aren't there. They aren't there yet mentally, or they haven't taken the time to actually, you know, look at resources, look online, look on the internet, look at the people impacted by what, you know, these people in power are doing. And I mean, I feel for that. I feel for that super hard, because it's never your fault if you are the one who is in a situation like that where you are trying to talk about a more in-depth conversation and talk about the layers, and someone's just not getting it, and then they start attacking you. I think that's not on you, because that's their defense mechanism. Their defense mechanism of being out of the water, not knowing anything going into this conversation, is why they're like, okay, well, since I don't know as much as you, I'm just gonna, like, defame your character and say that you don't know what you're talking about because it's projection.
That reminded me of this thing that, it's like a memory, but my freshman year, I think honestly you might have been in that class, but it was honors U.S. history with Gebhard. I don't know if you were.
I don't think I was in your class.
Okay. Anyway, but so I had that class, and we had to do like a reading thing and then have a discussion over it, and it was about child labor.
Oh my gosh. I didn't have your conversation, but we also had that same discussion.
And I remember, so it was my friend, she played basketball with me. She was 2 years older. And so I was a freshman at the time, she was a junior, and there was like 2 or 3 juniors in the class, and that was it. I don't know why they were in there, but they were just in there.
Yeah.
And so, like, the rest of us were freshmen, we were having a discussion, being like, child labor, horrible, like, that's so wrong, like, da-da-da-da, which, yes, obviously it is, yes. Yeah. And then my friend that's a junior, she was like, honestly, like, child labor is bad, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, it's not like da-da-da-da-da-da. And I remember everyone in the class being like, oh my gosh, like, how could she say that? Like, da-da-da-da. And I think that it was just so, but like, I don't exactly remember what she said, but I remember listening to her. And she had some, like, pretty valuable,
observations.
Yes, yeah. And like, I'm not saying that she's right and that child labor is like, she wasn't saying that it wasn't a big deal. She was just saying that there's other problems in the world that she thinks people should be facing first or whatever. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting to me how, like, she still, as a person, said what the opposite of what everyone else was saying. And, like, her development in her brain was higher because she was older.
Yeah.
And, like, it was just so weird and different to hear what she had to say compared to what my peers had to say.
Yeah.
And, like, no matter what the situation was about, like, I hate that it was about child labor and that I had to do that, but it was just, like, I don't know. It wasn't, I don't even know. It was just, like, wasn't black and white at all. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Like, I think just the fact that, in your retelling, how basically everybody got the shock value and only focused on the fact that she said child labor isn't the biggest issue in the world. And they took that and they ran with it. And they probably didn't listen to anything else that they had to say. They were probably, muttering and talking to each other, And that's one thing is that, it's like trying to untie a bunch of necklaces or trying to untie a bunch of yarn. You have to do one knot before you can get to the other, and all of it ends up tied together in the first place. That's why they're entangled in the first place, is because of, there's multiple situations, or there's multiple problems, or there's multiple aspects to something, and the face value doesn't cut it. And that's what the main thing school does, in my opinion, is teach critical thinking skills and prepares you for college when you learn even more critical thinking skills in your field to be able to understand and tackle those complex issues. And I feel like people and students, they just want to get in and get out. So then they're like, well, this is English. You should be teaching grammar and how to write an essay. Well, how are you going to be able to write an essay or properly articulate what you want to say if you have no thought behind what you are saying?
Yeah.
If you don't have a thesis, then you're not saying anything.
I like what you said about school being about, like, critical thinking and problem solving, because it's not like all classes are gonna, like, be things that you remember, but I definitely remember, like, the lessons that I've learned and, like, the mistakes that I've made. And, like, maybe it wasn't fun to go through, but it did help me, like, get to where I am today. So I like that a lot.
The effects of COVID have severely just, like, widened the maturity gap and the understanding gap. And because, I Sams'd at Hardin for a semester with 8th graders, and it is just, it's just jaw-dropping the lack of emotional, emotional regulation. Tantrums left and right, like, just constantly talking over the teacher, And I had to literally get on my soapbox and be like, this is not going to fly when you're a freshman. You are going to get detentions, ISS, OSS. No one is going to take this garbage because, I mean, teachers aren't going to fly with it. They're not going to have the patience that your middle school teacher has. And it's not, and some of these kids are just self-aware that they're being like really, really bad, super poorly behaved. And that self-awareness is what gets me so much, because like they went through COVID. If they were in 8th grade, they went into the pandemic in 6th grade. And as much as middle school sucks, the point of middle school especially is for that emotional maturity. Just like high school's critical thinking skills. I mean, middle school sucks because you're trying to figure out how to like emotionally take care of yourself and take care of your person and be aware of others when like not having to hold the hand of your parent.
Mm-hmm.
And because those crucial years were skipped out, I mean, they can't even play a Kahoot without like losing their mind or getting into a fight or arguing. No amount of seating charts work at all. There's always going to be beef between students. Kids will just not sit in their right place. They'll walk around, and discipline is just out the window. Because it's like, what can you do with an underdeveloped mind?
You hit it on the head. I went for Sam's, and I was in one of the English classes,
mm-hmm.
and they were just so disrespectful. And it, honestly, made me hate going there every single day.
Yeah.
Because, it just made me realize how much I didn't like them. And, my sister, she's in 8th grade.
Yeah.
And I think that since she has 2 older sisters, it helps her a lot. But, I told her, I was like, I hate your age. They're so bad.
Yeah.
And so rude and so just mean and not good people.
Yeah.
I remember thinking multiple times who is their parent and what did they do to them?
Yeah.
Because holy crap, it was insane the amount of time, it was every day, it wasn't just, I was having bad days so I lashed out.
This is the normal.
No, it was every single day. And I look at here with the freshmen and it's not much different. The freshmen, I walked into the upper commons bathroom yesterday,
mm-hmm.
and one of the stall doors was literally unhinged.
What?
And I couldn't close it. It, I tried closing it, and it, held, when it, holds it?
Yeah.
It was like that. And I was like, what the heck? And, we don't have mirrors in either of our That's actually ridiculous. And I don't know if you know who the freshmen that did it were, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just annoying.
Mm-hmm.
It's just frustrating. Because, I'm trying to get out. I'm trying to get out of here. I'm trying to grow up. I'm trying to move on. And then there's, children in your building that are ruining everything for you.
Yeah.
And I just think that they're so self-absorbed that they don't even realize that. They don't understand that their actions have consequences on other people.
Yeah.
That didn't do anything, that hasn't done anything all 4 years of being here.
Yeah.
I've never gotten any discipline.
Me neither. No.
And it's annoying. I don't have another word for it. That just made me heated because it's I understand why because of COVID, and I definitely struggled through that too, but we're out of the woods now. So it's time to grow up.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that,
because of how COVID has impacted growing up, like socially and understanding and developing those neurons that deal with impulsivity and emotions and figuring yourself out and figuring out social cues in other situations, because those milestones never happened. It's like they physically cannot just grow up as much as we want them to, as much as it would be nice. That is just going to be the domino effect of COVID, and that's just going to be, I mean, you see the trend of like pandemic babies and how they're running really early or they're walking super early, talking, all this stuff, but they're not going to be socialized. So because it's been like 2 to 3 years of this and they haven't been able to go out, hear loud noises, hear people, all this stuff, so they're extra super duper sensitive, and that will just continuously go down as they age and age and age, and that's going to be some of the long-term effects. Who cares about the long-term effects of the vaccine in grown adults? I care more about the brain development of these kids by having that lack of stimuli. And I mean, as an autistic person, I also kind of think that this might have even more of an uptick of kids who are going to end up being diagnosed or who exhibit symptoms of being on the spectrum or having sensory processing disorder specifically, because they weren't able to, adapt or start to understand or regulate themselves within that environment, or have someone who is able to help co-regulate with them, that they're just going to be sensitive to everything.
Mm-hmm. I think that you're right. And it's not even just the autistic spectrum itself. It's all spectrums, it's all illnesses, it's all disorders, psychological disorders especially, like that's what autism is, but like there's so many other ones as well. And the truth is you can't really run away from that kind of stuff because it's inevitable. You're given what is that called?
You're dealt a hand.
Yes, you're dealt the hand, and like that's all you have. I don't freaking know how it goes, but you get the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of stuff they can't help from COVID, but I'm also not gonna let them continue to act like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because we're at a point now that life is starting to get more back to normal, and just because you didn't have that chance.
I don't understand why the entire hallway has to be clanking around right now. If you hear it in the mic, I apologize, but continue your point.
Like, I'm not gonna excuse your behavior. Like, you didn't get to learn from whatever because we were in quarantine,
lockdown, all that stuff.
Everything, yeah. But now you have the chance to grow and learn and develop and catch up. So I'm going to hold you accountable until you catch up.
Yeah.
Because that might sound rude or like, I don't know, but it's also like, no, you need that. You need that to survive and grow and be an adult and be a successful adult. You need that to manage yourself.
Yeah.
When you're older.
And it just hurts being the collateral damage of that, of them learning. And even then, as of right now, I don't believe that there is any aspect of self-awareness within some of these students' actions whatsoever. And that's the issue, is that outside of them ending up in high school or going up a grade and stuff and having different teachers in these different social aspects and stuff, I mean, you cannot change something about yourself unless you are self-aware of it first. The first step is to acknowledge that you have a problem.
I was gonna say with maturity, the biggest step that you can like see for yourself to show your maturity or show like that you're growing as a person, would be having compassion, having empathy, kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Holding yourself accountable, self-discipline, and like apologizing and knowing you're in the wrong, and like not having too much pride.
Yeah.
Pride is a big part of something that is not emotional maturity, because I don't know, I just hate that. It's like, just own up to it, just say sorry. And some people refuse to, and it's just dumb. But there was one thing I wanted to talk about, just kind of about like self-image stuff, and it's shame versus guilt.
Yeah.
So the difference between shame and guilt is shame is saying if you do something wrong, that automatically means that you are stupid or unworthy or not good enough. Guilt is if you do something wrong, you hold yourself accountable, you address the issue, what you did wrong, your mistake, and you almost let it go in a sense. So like a sentence that you would use for if you were shaming yourself was, I went to school late, I'm such a loser, like I can't get my life together, I just suck in every way possible, just stuff like that. It's like stating facts. But if I were to guilt myself, I would say, Dean, I woke up late today. Like, when I do that, it just makes me so upset. Like, I wish that I just woke up on time. Like, I really need to work on that.
I feel bad for my teachers.
Yeah, like, that was something that I did that wasn't smart.
Yeah.
If I did something stupid and I said, oh my God, I'm so stupid, you're so stupid then. Like, you are letting yourself be stupid. If you do something dumb and you say, oh, that action was very stupid of me to do, that's the littlest difference.
Yeah.
But it's holding yourself at a higher standard and respecting yourself, that no matter what, you're not just, you can't just be categorized by one word.
Yeah.
Do you see the difference? Do you see how like different it could make it for someone?
I think that's an interesting take, because I don't see shame and guilt as that way. I see shame as almost like, shame is kind of like short term and guilt is long term. And I feel like guilt is internalized within you, while I feel like you can be shamed and have it turned into guilt. Because when people talk about, oh, I'm shaming you right now, it's usually outside sources being like, hey, that was messed up. Or hey, like, and they're the ones usually saying, oh, you're so stupid, why did you do that, shame, 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 shame. And then like the guilt afterwards is taking all of that in and then internalizing it and being like, man, maybe I am really stupid, maybe, like, why did I do that? And then sometimes that you can let go of what other people say, but if you end up holding on to what they say and turning it into your own words towards yourself, then that is the long game of trying to let go of that.
That's funny, because I see shame and guilt like the opposite. Yeah. But shame to me is like, shame is something that like, it's almost like a yucky feeling. It's like being disgusted with yourself, feeling ashamed of who you are. Like, shame is more of a long term for me, because it's like, it's just me repetitively being mean to myself. But like guilt is like, I don't know, guilt is just like not, I would rather feel guilty than feel shamed. Because I feel like shamed is almost like based on a characteristic that I have, or like the true colors of me, while guilt is more of like a mistake I made.
I think I was wrong and you're right, because I'm Googling it right now. And the first thing is that guilt is the feeling when you did something wrong or perceive that you did something wrong. Shame is the feeling when your whole self is wrong and it might not be related to a specific behavior or event.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like, I mean, and switching it up is not like a bad thing. I feel like as people have taken words and used them out of place, they gather different connotations than what they originally meant.
As long as you know the difference of being overly mean to yourself and understanding and learning from your mistakes, that's what's the most important. Because if you constantly shame yourself all the time, it's going to lead to low self-esteem. It's going to lead to low self-image and low body image, and you're going to think of yourself as a enemy instead of a friend. But if you guilt yourself, it lets you forgive. And a lot of people struggle with forgiving others because they can't forgive themselves. And I think that guilt is a much better way to cope because it's not as long-term, and it's focusing, it's compartmentalizing. It's focusing on one issue instead of saying you did one thing wrong and it affects everything else. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
And this is not to say that, oh, you should feel guilty all the time, or like, because guilt is just the first step of the process. Yeah. And that initial feeling is step one, self-awareness. Then you have to move on to step two of, okay, how do I fix this? How do I make amends with the mistake that I made? Did I break something? Do I need to buy a replacement? Do I need to apologize to a friend? Do I need to make up an assignment? You know, you can't stay on step one forever. And that you need to analyze and, separate that situation from yourself and from others. And then you need to move forward for that, because that is how you learn, is by fixing the situation best you can, making amends wherever you need to, and saving that knowledge that you've learned for the next time you come across a situation similar to that. Maybe you'll make better choices this time. Maybe, you won't have a coffee mug whenever it's raining outside,
The craziest thing to me is that literally all problems can be solved with communication. Whether it's problems within yourself, behavioral therapy is a great route to go if you can. Mm-hmm. Even talking to a friend or a trusted adult or trusted loved one can help you in so many different ways. If you're arguing with your friend, an apology and talking it out. If you're behind in school, reaching out to even a peer and getting help, or reaching out to your teacher and letting them know that you need extra help. I definitely think that I keep going back to maturity, because I think that these are all things that are so important for adults to have mm-hmm. in order to communicate and interact with the world around them.
Mm-hmm. With COVID effects, I think that this is a major wake-up call for educators and the government and parents especially, because I understand that some families are just working, and they're working to make ends meet, and those especially doing that got really, really hard during COVID. And those parents, I do not fault whatsoever. There are some families, however, that have the ability to be able to interact with their child and be able to keep up that social learning, who are able to afford to be a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, stay-at-home parent, etc., who also just miss the mark as well. You know, it's just like a failed promise in my eyes. How could you say you want to stay home to be with your kid, and then you just let them sit and rot in their bed and whatever, and you don't even try to incentivize doing activities, whether it's in your house, whether it's just arts and crafts, and like, or there's a way that even if your kid is slightly older, so then it's like, no, mom, I don't want to hang out with you, like, I hate you, blah, 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 blah. If there's ways that you can, make an activity that will help promote those learnings and those behaviors to something that they like. Maybe, you figure out how to do it through Minecraft. You make them play a bunch of Among Us with their friends because, technically, that is learning communication skills and learning how to navigate situations, because it's all about finding out who done it. You can make lessons, and Pinterest has so many ways that you can find that will work with your kid, or that will work for you. Or maybe, if you are willing and you have a sibling, like as a student or as a teenager, and if you hang out with your sibling anyway, you can also help, if you're willing, by just doing little activities with them. And if anything, that might be more palatable to them because, sibling bonding. Or maybe you both can be together and be like, wow, my family sucks. Let's go hang out together.
Yeah.
I just, it's not 100% anybody's fault for the situations. But now we are dealing with, the remnants and the remains and what has broken because of the pandemic.
I think that you're right. And I also think that a lot of people aren't meant to be parents that step into that role. And I think that that's why maybe we see a lot of those problems, just not being there for their, not being loving or like having an attachment, because like it just was never really their thing, which I understand, obviously. Like, I don't really want kids. I'm only 18, so who knows if that'll change, but like thinking about, I love babies, but I freaking hate children, and I hate most like ages, like I hate most people. So I don't think that I would be good to have a child in my care. I don't think I would be capable of it. So I think that a lot of people just don't respect that feeling, and it also makes it a lot harder because of certain laws that make it impossible for us to not have children. But that's a different topic, one that we probably shouldn't get into because it's super controversial. But I don't think that most people that become parents are ready to be parents or should be parents.
Yeah. I think that, it should take a lot of self-reflection and a lot of, the whole thing is like, oh, parenting doesn't have a manual. But there sure is a lot of,
You
tests.
know what is right and wrong.
Yeah, there's sure a lot of research papers, and there are a lot of,
Experiments, unethical experiments that were done.
Yeah, or like there's
ago.
like, doulas and oh my gosh, I forgot the name. Midwives? Yeah. There's so many different ways that you can find resources. You don't have to take every word for heart. You have the ability to pick and choose what people are saying and apply it to your own parenting or apply it to like anything. So, and it's just like so weird because there's no manual, yet mom shaming and parent shaming is absolutely rampant. The amount of times that I've been on like motherhood like TikTok or just like baby TikTok, and then I go into the comments and all it is like, oh my gosh, that's horrible for the baby, you're a terrible mom, blah 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 blah. And so much of it is, unless it's like literally you're feeding your kid rocks and making them eat dirt, like it's all
shut up! Forgetting words. Like, yeah, shut up! Like, I don't have any other word for it.
It's, oh my gosh.
People try and do that with like dogs and cats too, and it's like, I totally get it. Like, Biv, my cat, is my number one. He's my, oh my gosh, yesterday I was laying on my side and he just crawled under the blanket and cuddled right on my chest, and it was one of the best feelings I've ever had.
Yeah.
So like, I totally understand. He's like my little baby. Like, I love him to death. I treat my cat like my baby, but not everyone wants their animals to be like little princes and princesses, you know, like they don't want them to be super spoiled. So like, if they're not treated like a baby, then they are like kind of crapped on for it. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, but not everyone's like that. Like,
not everybody has
I'm not saying
funds.
Yeah, I'm not saying like you should get a cat and then like not take care of it. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that it's, I don't know. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, it's like
though?
just how it's like, you know, you don't want to have a kid who literally just gets everything handed to them and never had to face any sort of adversity ever, because that will impact how they are. That's the same with pets. You don't want to have every whim of theirs be entirely, completely soothed, because then whenever you don't have the ability to take care of them or get to their whims, they're gonna go crazy, or they're not gonna be able to cope with that.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't want someone telling me how to take care of my cat. Because, like, they're my cat. Like, I know how my cat works. It's the same with a kid. Like, it would be different if they were, like, actually doing something wrong. But, like how you said, unless they're feeding them dirt and rocks on the side of the road, like,
yeah,
some things just work different for people.
Yeah. It's like, the only time that I ever really agree with saying something about, like, pets is, like, if there's so many times you'd see fish tanks that are absolutely just not up to code. I mean, fish needs a lot of gallons of water and a filtration system. That, like, round fish bowl that Elmo has, Elmo's mom should have done a better job getting Goldie a better tank, because that is absolutely not, like, what it should be. That fish is not going to thrive, you know? But besides that, if it's, I keep forgetting the word, if it's subjective, you can't, it's not your place. If you say, oh, well, I don't think that's right, you don't think that's right. You don't know the entire circumstances. You are only seeing something filtered online on the internet. You don't know the entire aspect. Are you in their body? Are you, living in Minnesota where they live? No. You're in the middle of Missouri. You have to be able to understand that there's multiple walks of life. People have consciousness. people are roaming around and they have had a life before them for however long, and you are only going to know a certain percentage about that life. So you can't have any dictatorship over what happens.
Fish have feelings. I don't care who doesn't believe me, but they do. They feel fear. They feel, some fish, like their genetic composition, they're like really similar to us in a lot of ways. Like, especially like emotionally, like they feel a lot of feelings or emotions that we do too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I hate that people overfish and go fishing at all and then throw them back in the water. It's traumatic.
This is mildly off topic, but I recently had to watch a video in AP Bio that was called The Silent Spring. It was talking about this woman who basically wrote a book. There was a big insecticide, I forget the name of it, but everybody and their mother was using it, and it was like fog, but it would kill anything, absolutely anything. It doesn't matter if it was a good insect, a bad insect, birds, it doesn't matter, it would kill all of it. And somehow, scientists would try to justify that despite not knowing any of the effects. And of course, it's not used today because it was actually really bad for the environment. And, I hate that humanity has these moments where they try to understate and invalidate what they're doing to the entire world because, we are the top of the food chain. And it's like, okay, well, if you collapse all of these ecosystems, you aren't going to have honey. You are not going to have half the things that you need in order to make your precious little soaps for your small business. Everything is going to shut down, and yet we are trying to say that it's okay because we are at the top of the food chain. At one point, we weren't.
I was going to say, the only reason why we are is because we got lucky and some type of evolutionalized mutation. Our DNA changed and we developed into intellectual human beings.
Yeah.
Because if you look at our strength, we're not the top of the food chain. We're not the strongest, the fastest, the meanest. Look at our teeth. Our teeth aren't meant to kill. I'm sorry, these nails can't do anything for you.
Yeah.
My feet are super, super sensitive when I step on stuff. I hate it. But the only reason why we are is because we have other materials, because we overpopulated, because we are killing everything around us. And so no poop, we're gonna be overtaking everything. You know what I'm saying? We got lucky. We got lucky because we were a species that developed.
Yeah.
Faster than all the other ones.
It could have been literally any other animal. It's just, the luck of the draw. And this, I feel like as much as this sounds like a really off-topic tangent, I think it does come back to mental health because, once again, it's about self-awareness. If everybody was self-aware and mature and knew critical thinking and knew how to communicate, if all of those boxes were checked off, the likelihood is that we wouldn't have wars, we wouldn't have all of these issues with nationalism or supremacy or any type of phobia or ism that impacts minorities, and we would probably have a more flourishing earth than we do now. But because of emotional underdevelopment and because of the lack of self-awareness or the lack of understanding that we are still a part of nature as much as we want to separate ourselves from it, that is a cause for a lot of the distress and a lot of the issues plagued by society today.
Yeah. Doesn't it just make you angry talking about it? Like, I just wish that there's so many things that I could change, and I just can't.
Yeah.
And you're completely right. It's just about morals and values of people. Just like understanding that you are not the only thing that matters. Where you come from is not the only thing that matters. Mm-hmm. Like, we are trying to keep an entire planet alive. Like, it's not just about you. You are living in literally like 0.00002 seconds of the universe's time.
Yep.
Like, nobody cares about you. I'm sorry. Like, it's not like that, but I'm just saying, like, it's the bigger picture. Please see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like that's a huge issue that I feel like I face, is that I'm surrounded by people who only know society
Mm-hmm.
and only focus on what is in front of their face, while I am trying to comprehend the entire universe,
Mm-hmm.
the entire conception of what we have now. And you're trying to juggle that and try to communicate that feeling with people who are only looking at their phones, only looking at these societal constructs that we've made. And the thing is that you can't get too upset, and you can't get so upset that you completely check out from it all. Mm-hmm. Because there's this thing that's like doom scrolling, which is basically you hear some really, really bad news. So all you want to do is scroll on social media and learn more about it. And then you're constantly just thinking about it. You're like, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is happening. And some people, because they've done that so much, all they do is they want to check out and entirely just ignore it. You can't ignore it. You can't doom scroll. All you can do is educate yourself, educate others, and try our best. Call your representatives for your state, all that stuff. Democracy is really, really slow, but that is how you're gonna have to interact with the world until it changes. You're dealt with your hand of cards, and you just have to play it smart. Thank you so much for tuning into The Crow's Nest. We hope you have a
productive day.
And as always,
go get 'em, pirates!